Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition. Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney. Over the last several shows, we've carried on conversations with guests around the idea of health and safety on the job. Conversations that have ranged from injury on the job to the impact that loud sounds have. So we want to continue that series in this show. Our guest this afternoon is Dr. Okurowski, who is the medical director at the Occupational and Environmental Health Center of Rhode Island. Dr. Okurowski, I want to welcome you back. You're a frequent guest.
Good to be back.
The conversation today we want to focus on centers around something that people really don't think about as much as other potential injuries on the job, and that's skin cancer.
Yes, correct, Bob. Most people, when they think about injuries on the job, heavy construction, think about the big things, fractures, falls, even death, and all the prevention that goes into workplace safety and health to minimize the impact of those injuries. But one that's flown under the radar until more recently has been the issue of skin cancer and how much it impacts laborers who work in outdoor settings, and in particular construction workers. Skin cancer rates in construction workers are some of the highest in the United States, and construction workers actually carry some of the highest burden of skin cancer among all industry.
Some unions appear to be ahead of the curve, and in the research we take a look at LiUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, and how they use their health and safety fund to be able to address this. Now we know that laborers have kind of been ahead of the curve in many ways in how they address health and safety on the job, but they really have seem to have taken somewhat of a lead on this issue of skin cancer and the potential for skin cancer, and maybe even identifying it.
Yes, absolutely. Laborers Union and their Health and Safety Fund has been on the forefront of some of the earliest large-scale programs preventing skin cancer. Dates back to the late 90s, early 2000s, with a development in partnership with the Skin Cancer Foundation and the development of the SunSense program. And the SunSense program grew out of the Health and Safety Fund and has really been a model program on prevention early identification. It was a collaboration where they really identified patterns of behavior, talking to laborers, and really figuring out how do we attack the problem, how do we approach the problem, and how do we get results. And one of the earliest things that was started was when they looked at skin cancer was how can we get early adoption of some prevention and preventive measures. And the first creation was the idea of the cloth flap. And you'll see many laborers in outdoor work in the summer months wearing the cloth flaps underneath their helmets. And that's been an amazingly successful program. Currently, right now, the Health and Safety Fund gives out anywhere from 10 to 20,000 cloth flaps a year to help prevent skin cancer on the head and neck. And it's worn underneath the construction helmet, and it drapes across the back of the neck, and it blocks harmful UV radiation. And it's been a very, very successful program. They expanded upon that program with the addition of small packets of sunscreen, typically SPF 30 or higher, that's actually given out to laborers on a daily basis. Initially, it was thought that, many laborers weren't lotion friendly and weren't going to apply this stuff, but it's been proven that it was quite the opposite. It's been highly successful. When made available, people do use it, and when educated through a program like SunSense, they really do adopt these preventive measures, and it has been highly successful, as I stated before.
When you take a look at this whole issue and look at the conversations about skin cancer, it's not that it's new.
No.
But the profile of it in terms of people who work outdoors, police officers, firefighters, people who work on telecommunications, on lines, laborers, I think people get frightened with that conversation about cancer of any kind. I think here we're talking about something that, yes, there's melanoma, but we're not really talking about that in this situation because this is identifiable, treatable, and that's really the goal.
Correct, yes. One of the components of a program like SunSense, and there's many other labor organizations and health and safety funds that have adopted similar programs, is education. And health and safety fairs are key, and at many health and safety fairs, skin cancer is a clear and popular topic. But one of the key emphases there is that the key is, first, prevention, wearing sunblock, appropriate skin clothing, sunglasses for eye protection from the sun as well, and then early identification. And part of the SunSense program, or any program like that, is to get the individuals to early identify any abnormal lesions develop on the skin with their primary care providers or health and safety managers, and get appropriate care. And as you mentioned, the vast majority of early identified skin lesions are, in fact, highly treatable, things like basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell. But the key here is education, prevention, and early identification. And when folks are educated, it does remove some of that fear. And it's really getting people to get over the hurdle of acting instead of, postponing, making the decision to get follow-up. And we've been involved in a number of health fairs where, and other health fairs report this, where almost universally somebody goes to a health fair, gets information, starts to address the issue, and follow up with their doctor or other appropriate healthcare specialist, and identifies a lesion and gets early treatment. And the literature's full of stories of people who have clearly benefited from these programs and gotten things treated and avoided significant complications.
I think that's a very real fear of people working both outside and people who really just learn about skin cancer. I think there's a fear on the part of people to actually participate in a program that would identify some of the lesions, and I think you mentioned some lady in a fair a number of months ago in Providence who actually had a piece of equipment.
Yes, yes. Many of you who come to the fairs will actually see there's a number of techniques, and I won't go into the details, but they basically use a special UV light that can identify early risk. It's clearly not designed to diagnose or treat, but it's a screening tool that identifies early damage. It's very easy to use, it's available, and it's really been a fantastic tool to gate people to appropriate follow-up. And from there, again, early detection, prevention, treatment.
I think it's interesting too, because I think this carries over. I think if you get anybody who works outside conscious of that, that transfers even to their children, because we see more and more when on beaches where parents are lathering their children with sunscreen, or they're wearing clothing that gives some degree of UV protection. There must be construction equipment clothing too that has UV protection now.
Yes, we've really seen a revamping of how we all approach the sun. Sun shirts, sun hats, sun clothing has been adopted recreationally, but also in the job site. You'll see some construction workers wearing special collars that they can pull up over the back of their neck, up over their chin and face when it's particularly hot. You see that generally more in the South, but you do see it, in the New England area as well. They're highly effective, and they do a remarkably good job at blocking the sun. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Health and Safety Fund and the Laborers Union has, with this program, it's really becoming much more than just a regional issue. It's national, it's now international, global. WHO World Health Organization has identified now skin cancer as a significant risk factor, but it's highly preventable and treatable for all folks who work outside, and it's becoming an internationally recognized program. And the programs that were developed here are serving as models for that. So there's a really good success story of early adoption and success, and then sort of it spreading out into other areas of, across the country and also now the globe.
Even you mentioned earlier about sunglasses, people wearing sunglasses and the positive impact that can have. It's not a matter of it just being plain sunny out. You want to dull in some of that light. It really does have a serious impact.
Absolutely. The typical recommendations traditionally for health and safety eyewear was just thinking about impact trauma. Now you'll see many of the trades using eyewear that's actually also designed to shield from UV radiation. And sunglasses are no longer just fashionable. It's clearly to protect the eye, which is vulnerable from prolonged unprotected exposure with the development of things like cataracts and even some other more significant eye diseases that are now being associated with prolonged unprotected sun exposure. So yes, we definitely are seeing not only skin protection, but now eye protection as well. And the health and safety equipment is adapting quickly to help solve that problem.
I want to thank you for taking the time to have this discussion today. I think that in the past, we've spoken about many things around the issue of health and safety on the job, and I think as time goes by, there is much more of a growth and concentration on looking at the things like potential for skin cancer on the job by using health and safety funds to help provide workers with the equipment and the materials that they need to make sure that they're safe from the elements as well. So,
absolutely, yeah.
So I want to thank you for participating in the show today.
Always good to be here.
Any last minute additions?
We got to come up with something next time and figure out where we're going to go from here.
Dr. Okurowski, I want to thank you for participating in the show this afternoon.
Always good to be here.
Yeah, you're a welcome guest, and you always provide a wealth of information around the areas of health and safety. For our people in the watching and listening audience, Dr. Okurowski is the medical director at the Occupational and Environmental Health Center of Rhode Island. If you have any questions for him, please feel free to call the office here. If you have any other questions you want directed to him around the area of health and safety in the workplace, please call the Institute at 463-9900. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Steve Brady, Director of the Local 99 Apprenticeship Training Facility here in Cranston, Rhode Island. This is a fairly new facility for us. We've had 2 successful school years here, and we've just started our 3rd. The current school is approximately 12,500 square feet, about twice as big as the last school we were in, and 3 times our original school, which was located on Pecasset Avenue in Silver Lake. We have approximately 100 apprentices here that we train every year, and probably 600 journeymen that go through this facility in the course of a year. Our students earn 25 college credits each year, and these college credits matriculate, and after they've graduated after 5 years, they can go on to get degrees in the local state colleges. Journeymen can also take online classes in our new computer labs, and they can matriculate these classes as well to the state colleges. We offer 2 different types of training. We offer a nationally recognized curriculum and a nationally recognized craft certification program. The curriculum is accredited by the ACE accreditation, College Accreditation Service, and the hands-on experience that the students have is both skills performance, where the expectation is that students will have certain skills at the end of their first year of apprenticeship, second year, and so on. So there's that expectation. The students will actually test out in these testing facilities. We'll show you these labs a little later on in this video. The second part is the craft certification. The National Joint Apprenticeship Training Committee has developed a national certification booth where we can actually evaluate students and journeymen to determine what their skill level is. The journeymen, when we evaluate journeymen, we can find out where their weak spots are, and we can help them improve, and we can find out where their real true expertise is, and help them hone that to perfection. We also use this facility to enhance student skills, to work with contractors and make available to the contractors whatever type of specialty training their employees may need. Sometimes out-of-state employers interested in coming in and opening a shop in this state may need electricians that have special skills. We will offer classes in those special skills and specially tailor the instruction for that particular contractor. So we're here as an educational facility for the contractors, for the journeymen, and for the apprentices. This is something that we had started back in 1985, long time ago. Jimmy and I both graduated from those and got our degrees from the community college through this articulation agreement. And then we went on to get our bachelor's and master's degrees from the state colleges. The articulation agreement that we have an articulation agreement with the community college now, and we're working in conjunction with the ILSR to, the ILSR is providing us with courses that are being held over on Amflex Drive where the Union Hall is, and our students, our journeymen, our apprentices, our members are taking classes there, credited classes, 3-credit classes, mostly Gen Ed classes to fulfill the requirements of their degree program. We have an IBEW scholarship foundation which helps support journeymen and apprentices in this in their effort to get a degree, because we believe in education. And as you tour the facility, one of the things you'll see is these signs that are posted in the hallway. They're skills signs, and they're our creed, our belief system, if you will. The belief in education, the belief in the American way of life. We believe and we hold these values very dear. So as far as the articulation agreements are concerned, we're working with the colleges constantly to improve them and to get the best education we can for our members, whether they're apprentices, journeymen, or even when they're retired. If they have an interest in learning more, we have an interest in providing the education for them.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week: Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m. Welcome to this edition of Labor Vision. I'm Bob Delaney, Executive Director of the Institute for Labor Studies and Research. Labor Vision, a production of the Institute, focuses on topics of importance to working Rhode Island families. We hope you enjoy this evening's edition.
So again, my name's Jim Parisi. I'm a field rep with the Rhode Island Federation of Teachers and Health Professionals, and I'm the new president of the Rhode Island Labor History Society. Thank you for coming out on a rainy night. We're not done eating and drinking yet. They're going to bring out some coffee and pastry, but it's close to 7:30, so I thought it was important for us to get moving with the program. I've got a few introductory remarks, and then we'll move on to the speakers. First of all, I stand here on behalf of a number of different dedicated volunteers who run the Labor History Society. The organization has existed for about 27 years now. Our founder, Scott Malloy, was happy to finally pass on the reins of leadership. So Scott, Kathy Collette, our most recent past president, I want everyone to know who you two are. You founded this organization. Thank you for allowing us to celebrate labor history. Linda LeClaire is our vice president of the Labor History Society, made all the food arrangements. Hey! Matt DiTomaso is our treasurer. He's going to pay the bill for your dinner. And Mike D'Amico is our secretary, who is also the logistics man, who set up the different signs on the perimeter, set up our Prince Spaghetti receptacles for donated food, and just about everything else under the sun. Mike D'Amico. So the Labor History Society is dedicated to keeping labor history alive. We're very proud to have an organization that has about 450 members on our list in a small state like the state of Rhode Island. We do a number of different things during the year. Probably our biggest annual event is our August celebration, when we induct people and honor 3 or 4 different people into the Labor History Society Hall of Fame. We do that at the Roger Williams Park Casino. It's an important event where we get to recognize labor leaders from different labor organizations as well as community members. We are dedicated to running programs like this where we try and have interesting topics that we could talk to people about and people can learn something about labor history. One really neat and interesting thing we do is students in public and private high schools in Rhode Island and some middle schools participate in Labor Day, History Day, a national competition where students do either a paper or a PowerPoint or a different kind of history project. We cut $100 checks to all students who do projects oriented towards labor to encourage labor studies amongst our students. We publish lots of pamphlets and booklets, and if you didn't grab them when they came in, we have a freebie. We have something that we'd love to have you all take home with you if you haven't done it already. It's Marxist militants and macaroni. There's interesting pictures and a story about what we're going to hear about tonight. We've also reproduced a paper from our keynote speaker today. But we do a lot of publications, again, to keep labor history alive in a real important way. We are a cost-effective organization. We have not cheap dues, but affordable dues. And if you're not a member of the Labor History Society, membership applications are over there. Thank you for the 7 people who've already handed in their dues this evening. Thank you and welcome to our organization. Coming up, we have one event coming up next month. Again, in an effort to keep labor history alive and remind people about the struggles that got us to where we are today. This month is the 40th anniversary of the death of an AFSCME member who was killed on a picket line over at IMH in Cranston. So because we had this going on now, we're having a 40-year and 1-month commemoration of the death of Wilma Schessler. We're going to have it over at IMH in Cranston on December 9th. That's the kind of thing we do to remind everyone in Rhode Island about struggles that have gone on in the past. And in addition to the pamphlets, just one other reminder, well, 2 other reminders. Number 1, we also have posters. If you didn't take a poster coming in, take one going out, because every single book and pamphlet and poster that we don't give out tonight, Scott has to put in his basement, and he's had enough of that. And then the final reminder is something I spoke about a half hour ago. We're not charging for the dinner. Many people donated food that we're going to give to the food pantry located at this parish. And if you're so inclined and you want to make a cash contribution to the Rhode Island Food Bank, we're going to be making a donation on behalf of all the members of the Labor History Society. You can give a check to myself or my bride, who's sitting in the back corner over there with the envelope full of the many donations that have already been given. Thank you all very much for that. We have one change in program notes. Unfortunately, one of our 2 speakers, Dr. Eve Stern, is not available to join us this evening. She had a family medical situation that needed attending to, and it's a real disappointment that she's not going to be able to come and speak. She wrote a really interesting book related to the Catholic Church and its relationship with a labor movement that really speaks to what we're going to talk about this evening. But perhaps at some other time you all will have an opportunity to hear from her directly. But we have a keynote speaker, Russell D. Simone, whom I've never heard before, but he comes highly recommended, and he is highly recommended by important people. And he's going to give us a talk. Russell is an expert in the Dorr War and Thomas Dorr, which is the really interesting Rhode Island story. He's what I'd call an amateur historian. He's been doing it on his own for close to 30 years now. He's published articles. He's published books related to Thomas Dorr, but he also was going to bring some expertise on something that happened in this neighborhood 100 years ago related to food riots. And when people were asking me, well, why is the Labor History Society doing something related to a food riot that happened on Federal Hill 100 years ago? Number one, I'm hoping Russ informs us of that, but I'll let all of you know what I believe, having read through it. A lot of people who were involved in the labor movement in this neighborhood 100 years ago were also involved in the food protests and the food riots themselves, to the point where there was a Labor Day celebration shortly after the riots, and the people in this community who were somewhat unhappy with what was going on with the AFL at the time hosted their own Labor Day celebration in Olneyville a week or so after the official Labor Day celebration. So there's definitely a labor angle to this story, and without further ado, Russ DeSimone.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here on such an inclement evening. Initially, I was going to speak for 20 minutes, and then Eve Stern was going to get up, and I figured, well, she can carry the load. She's the PhD, and I would just give you an overview of what was happening here on Federal Hill and something about the macaroni riots. Now, it's most appropriate for me that this meeting is being held here at the Holy Ghost Church. Okay? It was nearly 80 years ago that my parents were married here. It was also the place where my grandparents were buried from. And probably, most notoriously, it was from here that I made my first communion and my confirmation. So I'm always pleased to be here at the Holy Ghost Church. It's the most important church to me in the state. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about the macaroni riots, give you a little flavor as to what came down, what transpired. Most importantly, Joe Sullivan's book is a detailed account. I'm going to give you a little bit of a flavor, but if you go through Joe's book, you're going to get a real fine understanding. So with that, I'm not sure if we'll be able to see these slides in the back, so I'll kind of read them if you don't mind. This is about the Providence Italian community. And before Federal Hill was Italian, it was Irish. And I've been asked to make a statement by Ray McKenna, who's right there. Raise your hand, Ray. Ray has a blog, and it's called Federal Hill Irish. And anybody that has any information pertaining to the Irish on Federal Hill, please see Ray. He's got a wonderful blog. He updates it frequently, and there's nobody more passionate about being Irish and on Federal Hill than Ray. And he lives in Connecticut. Anyway, there was a small influx of Italians coming to Rhode Island in the 1860s, but it was very small. It wasn't until a little later that we begin to see northern Italians coming to Rhode Island. And they came from the northern provinces. You can read them: Piedmont, Lombardy, Tuscany, Liguria. And I have a couple of little side notes I want to make about northern Italians, okay? When I was a boy, my father came from Silver Lake. My mother came here from Federal Hill. We lived on Federal Hill. I'm from Federal Hill. But we always went to Silver Lake to get a haircut. My father and I get in the car and we drive to Silver Lake, his turf, and we get a haircut. And one night, or one day, there was somebody in a barber chair. He's getting a haircut, and he's speaking a language which I didn't understand. It wasn't English, which sometimes people say I don't understand. And it wasn't really Italian, I didn't think. So on the way home, I asked my father in the car, what was that man speaking? He said, well, it's a dialect of Italian, but he's northern Italian. And he said, never trust northern Italians. Okay? That's a fact. And I've come to find that out for myself. Okay? But at the turn of the century, people from the south came, from Abruzzi, okay? From Campania, where my father's father came from Bellasica, and from Calabria, where my mother's folks are from. I had an uncle, and his name was Francesco, but everybody called him Cal. And the reason they called him Cal, it was short for Calabrese, okay? So we see people settling in Federal Hill, in Silver Lake, which is a brand new development, and in the north end, Charles Street, right around Hopkins Park, or St. Anne's Church, is a lovely church. Okay? The year of the riots in Providence, there's an estimated 20,000 Italians. It's a significant increase, and the only thing I can liken it to is if you look at the Hispanic influx and the population growth, it's similar to that. It's a century later, but it's similar. I want to mention what a few people have said, because when Italians came here, we brought certain things. It just wasn't, good pasta. There was other things that we brought, okay? At the outset of mass migration, radicalism was an emergent characteristic of the political scene in many European countries, especially Eastern European countries. In the case of Italians, a small but committed group of radicals became immigrants to the United States, some permanently and others for a temporary stay. And this is Salvatore Laguma's introduction to the American Italian Historical Society report. They do these great reports once a year. If you can get your hands on them, it's wonderful reading. In this particular one, the topic was Italian radicalism. And in the same study, Nunzio Periconi said probably the first militants to reach these shores were refugees from the government repression that destroyed the First International in Italy around the end of the 1870s. Thereafter, persecution and poverty, very important, persecution and poverty play an important role in these riots, accounted for a steady diaspora of Italian anarchists, hundreds of whom were eventually swept along with the wave of immigrants to North and South America. Certainly by the 1890s, an Italian anarchist colony was well established on American soil. I'm not saying everybody that was Italian living on Federal Hill was an anarchist. I don't want to read about that in that blog, right? Okay? But the fact of the matter is, that kind of thinking, and we're going to see it all the way up to Sacco and Vanzetti case in the 1920s, but anarchists were coming over. Anarchists were responsible for killing President McKinley. Okay? It's just the way the world was going. But then I had a quote for Eve. This was going to be a surprise for her, but she's not here. I was going to quote from Bibles and Ballots. Ethnics disconnected from electoral politics by language, citizenship, and inexperience, and as well as voting restrictions. Okay? They're new to the country. They don't fit in, and things are not going to go easily. And this is true today of any immigrant as it was 100 years ago. Although focused on food prices, the riots reflect larger resentment over poverty, political impotence, and the difficulty of preserving old ways in a new country. Okay? There's a lot of resentment, and you're going to see the shift in the riots go from the merchants to the Anglo-Irish police force. And you're going to see that on the second night of riots. Okay? A couple of more quotes. Paul Brule in the Italian-American radicals in labor in Rhode Island. Continuing unemployment, skyrocketing prices, and the specter of a European war from which American profiteers were amassing fortunes deepened Italian-American resentment in 1914 and provided radicals with an unprecedented legitimacy. Okay? So what you're going to see is these people who just being sucked dry by the merchants and profiteering predicated on the World War. But they're upset for other reasons as well. They're not treated well by the establishment. Let's put it that way. There were two investigations when prices went up. One was a statewide investigation. One was a citywide investigation. In the statewide investigation, upon the order of Governor Abram Potier, State Commissioner of Industrial Statistics, George Webb, investigates causes for increases in food prices. And it wasn't just pasta. Prices were going up on cheese, on olive oil, you name it. Report submitted on April 19th concludes price increases are due to outside causes. Surprise, the government, oh, it's not us, it's somebody else, okay? The next day, Mayor Gaynor from Providence, I'm gonna have to take a break now, dessert's here. In a separate investigation called by Providence Mayor Joseph Gaynor and conducted by Rhode Island Retail Grocers and Marketmen Association, why would you have them doing the study? Okay? Draws a similar conclusion in a report on August 20th. So on the 19th, Republican Governor Poitier says, oh, not us. And the next day, Democratic Mayor Gaynor draws the same conclusion, but he's got, you know, the Foxes doing the study. Kind of ludicrous. So I'm going to try and tell the story of this riot through a series of newspaper headlines, because I thought that's the best way in a short amount of time to see it. So I got a lot of slides. I'm going to try and read them so the people in the back can also get a flavor. This is Governor Poitier, and as you can see, outsiders responsible for increases here. Couldn't be our local merchants. They're as pure as the driven snow, okay? Oh, I went the wrong way on that. And here is Mayor Gaynor. I think I took this off your website, Paul Campbell. He's not hearing me, so that's good. I think I took this picture off your website. This is the mayor. Big headlines, local food merchants deny responsibility. Well, who the heck is rising these prices then? If it isn't our local merchants, is it somebody overseas? You got to remember that the war just broke out, World War I. But it's only a week or two old. It's impossible for food to become so scarce in Europe that it can't be shipped here. So what's causing this? It's profiteering. And the best part is the Labor Advocate, great radical newspaper edited by Robert Hunt. And now it's August 22nd. It's the Saturday following these midweek reports. And I don't think you can see it, but intense suffering caused by rise in price of food. Workers starve while investigators talk. Folly to expect any benefit from investigation conducted by officials of Gaynor or Poitier type. Okay, so the labor newspaper, the Labor Advocate, is calling the shots fairly accurately. Okay, people are starving. What's happened is, previous year, 1913, there's an economic downturn. People are either unemployed, or if they are working, they've had their wages cut, 20%. They're working at places like the Queen Dye down the street, or at Brown & Sharp up the road. Okay, they're finding they have to do with less. And of course, they have fairly good-sized families back then. And the staple that you put on an Italian table, as you found out tonight, is 3 different kinds of pasta. The following Sunday, the 22nd, I should point out there's several protest meetings. The first takes place on a Saturday evening. It takes place on Dean Street and Atwells Avenue, right in front of where the Karl Marx Club was. Okay? It's also where my mother lived. She lived on Barker Street. Okay? I don't want to say my mother was a radical, but she was alive at the time. But it takes place there. And these people, they're not anarchists, they're socialists. They're making trouble. They call for a mass meeting, and 2,000 people show up. Okay? Significant number of people. The week before, they plastered all of these placards, little handbills, saying there's going to be a meeting. And numerous people get up, and they basically deride the merchants for being profiteers. And there's a large police force on hand that evening, okay? There's a significant number of police on standby, and they're listening. Many of the speakers are speaking in English, and they can tell if something's going to happen, and nothing happens. Everybody speaks, everybody goes away, okay? But you got a lot of people there. That's 23rd. Mayor the next day says, still not his responsibility. He says it's coming from outside the area. It's not our local merchants. The biggest local merchant on the avenue was Frank Ventrone, okay? He is across, I'll try and explain it for most people. He's next to like, you know where the $3 bar is? And they're right there, where the Sienna restaurant is. Right in that block, for you, Scott, it's across from Shallow Brothers and Cream Puffs, okay? But it's right there. And he owns a block and a half. Not only does he have his import business there, but there's also a pharmacy which he owns. There is a dry goods store, which is a Jewish merchant owns. And there is a barber shop, okay? All belonging to Mr. Ventrone. The Labor Advocate on the 29th, and keep in mind, the Labor Advocate gets published on Saturday morning. So they're saying, well, Italian workers of Federal Hill have big protest meeting. He's talking about the one the Saturday before. He doesn't know that this evening, the 29th of August, there's going to be real problems in Federal Hill. There's going to be a massive riot. And the target for all of this is going to be the buildings of Frank Ventrone. And of course, it says local men are not to blame for high prices. You just hear it over and over, okay? And powers that be, it's not sinking in that you can't keep giving that answer to this population during this time. I often thought that if all of these studies were done in January, there probably would have been no riot. You ever notice that riots happen in the hot days of summer? Ferguson, Missouri is a good example of that. It was in August. The riots in Providence, they're in August. And the reason is, it's too damn hot in the flats that people are living in, so they go out to the streets. They go out to cool off, okay? So you have lots of people in a small area milling about. You get some rabble-rousing speakers going, and it's pretty easy there's going to be a problem. Okay, I wanted to quote Joe Sullivan from his book, page 82. Okay, and this is right on. Rioting is an electoral activity of the disenfranchised. If I can't vote and change what's happening, well, I got another way of getting your attention. And it's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be a riot. Okay. Keep in mind, that's the best quote for the whole thing, Joe Sullivan. Well, what happened that night is Providence Police did not staff as many people as they normally would have because the previous Saturday, things were pretty quiet. 2,000 people show up. There's no riot. Everybody goes home. Well, this Saturday, only 1,000 people show up. That's probably the inhabitants of one block, you know. But 1,000 people show up, and they are whipped into a frenzy, okay? And there's one person in particular that seems to be the ringleader for this, Emmanuel Parati, okay? He eventually is going to get a jail sentence and a fine. But he's the ringleader for breaking the windows of Ventrone's shop. Just the windows alone cost Frank Ventrone $2,000. All of his wares, all of the pasta, all of the olive oil, all of the cheeses are all on Atwell's Avenue, all being trampled by people.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Labor Vision. We appreciate your input and encourage your comments. Labor Vision can be seen on this channel 3 times each week, Tuesday at 7 p.m., Thursday at 8 p.m., and Saturday at 5 p.m.